Strategic brilliance, according to the Zephyrian High Command, required exactly three things: overwhelming technological superiority, meticulous intelligence gathering, and absolute certainty that enemies were intellectually inferior. For 2 centuries, this formula had worked spectacularly across 17 sectors, earning them their well-deserved reputation as the most feared military strategists this side of Andromeda, which made their current predicament fascinating from an academic standpoint. The war room aboard the flagship Inexorable Logic hummed with the quiet efficiency of a military machine that had never known defeat. Holographic displays painted the air in blues and greens, showing troop movements, supply lines, and tactical projections that would have made lesser species weep with envy. At the center of it all, Supreme Tactical Coordinator Vex Thule studied the data with the satisfied expression of someone who had just solved a particularly challenging puzzle. "The humans," Vex Thule announced to the assembled officers, his mandibles clicking with what passed for amusement among his kind, "are even more predictable than we initially calculated." The statement drew appreciative murmurs from the tactical staff. Predictability, after all, was the cornerstone of effective warfare. An enemy who followed patterns could be countered, manipulated, and ultimately defeated with mathematical precision. The humans, despite their recent emergence onto the galactic stage, had proven refreshingly conventional in their military organization, or so the Zephyrians believed. Their intelligence apparatus had spent 18 months cataloging every aspect of human military doctrine. They infiltrated war colleges, monitored training exercises, and analyzed personnel records with methodical patience. The picture that emerged was disappointingly familiar: hierarchical command structure, conventional tactical thinking, and reliance on brute force bordering on primitive. Their command paradigm follows standard bipedal patterns, reported Intelligence Coordinator Tex Volve, manipulating the holographic display to highlight Earth's military academies. Authority flows through clearly defined channels, with senior officers bearing ceremonial distinctions that make identification trivial. Their most effective commanders accumulate recognition markers, medals, ribbons, public acknowledgements that serve as convenient targeting indicators. Vex Thule's secondary arms gestured approvingly. The Zephyrians had employed this targeting methodology across dozens of campaigns, systematically eliminating enemy leadership through precision strikes against the most decorated officers. Remove the head, and the body invariably collapsed into manageable chaos. "And their selection?" Victor inquired. "Optimal," Thexville replied with evident satisfaction. "Female, age 37 standard years, currently assigned to their Strategic Defense Institute. Educational credentials include graduation with highest honors from 3 separate military academies, tactical certifications in 17 different combat scenarios, and psychological profiles indicating exceptional leadership capabilities under stress." The hologram shifted to display surveillance footage of their chosen target, a human female of unremarkable physical appearance, moving through what appeared to be a training facility with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command. Her uniform bore an impressive array of insignia, each one carefully catalogued and verified by Zephyrian intelligence analysts. "Specialized knowledge," Vex Thule prompted, "extensive counterintelligence operations, psychological warfare, strategic planning at the theater level." Her published research on alien military doctrine has been incorporated into human defensive protocols across their entire fleet structure. This last detail particularly pleased the assembled commanders. Capturing an individual with intimate knowledge of human defensive strategies would provide invaluable intelligence for the coming conquest. The fact that she had studied alien military doctrine simply meant she would understand exactly how thoroughly outclassed her species truly was. The abduction unfolded with mechanical precision, characteristic of all Zephyrian operations. Stealth infiltrators bypassed orbital defenses through mapped blind spots, their ships incorporating adaptive camouflage that rendered them invisible to human sensors. The target's routine had been monitored for weeks, creating a predictable vulnerability window during evening transit between institute and residential quarters. Transport inhibitors neutralized her communications array. Selective neural dampeners prevented any attempt at resistance. Temporal displacement fields ensured the entire operation occurred within a microsecond time frame that would appear as nothing more than a brief power fluctuation to any potential witnesses. By the time Earth's authorities realized their strategic mastermind had vanished, the Zephyrian task force was already 3 star systems away, their captive secured in the most sophisticated detention facility ever constructed by their species. The entire operation had taken less than 4 hours from initiation to completion, with 0 casualties and no evidence of extraterrestrial involvement. Phase 1 complete, Vextool noted with the satisfaction of a professional watching his subordinates execute flawless technique. Psychological assessment indicates the target will require minimal conditioning before providing useful intelligence. Human mental architecture lacks the redundant protective structures we encountered with the Kethmori resistance. The comparison drew knowing clicks of amusement from the tactical staff. The Kethmori had required nearly 3 months of intensive psychological manipulation before yielding strategically useful information, their crystalline thought patterns proving surprisingly resistant to conventional interrogation techniques. Humans, according to all available data, possessed linear cognitive processes that should prove far more accessible. Estimated timeline for intelligence extraction, Vextool inquired. 48 hours maximum, replied interrogation specialist QX-Nil. Human psychological profiles indicate strong emotional attachments to their species' survival. Standard leverage protocols should prove sufficient. As the inexorable logic continued toward the secure facility, command staff drafted preliminary invasion plans based on expected intelligence. Fleet positioning, supply logistics, occupation protocols, mundane details transforming battlefield victory into lasting conquest. None paused to consider why their target seemed remarkably easy to capture. None questioned why a strategic mastermind maintained predictable routines, or why someone trained in counterintelligence failed to detect weeks of surveillance. The possibility that they might be walking into a trap never occurred to them. After all, they were Zephyrians, masters of strategic thinking and tactical superiority. The humans were simply another primitive species, about to learn the price of attracting their attention. The detention facility aboard Research Station Omega-7 represented 2 centuries of Zephyrian advancement in the delicate art of extracting information from unwilling subjects. Psychological pressure chambers calibrated to induce maximum stress responses, sensory manipulation arrays capable of creating perfect illusions of hope or despair, neural interface systems that could map thought patterns with surgical precision, all of it absolutely useless against someone who found the entire situation genuinely entertaining. So, the human said, settling back in her restraint chair with the casual comfort of someone attending a particularly interesting lecture, the whole facility runs on fear-based psychological manipulation. That's actually quite elegant from a design standpoint, though I have to say, the execution feels a bit derivative. Interrogation specialist QX-Nil regarded his subject through the reinforced transparency of the observation chamber, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed this unexpected response. In 17 years of professional interrogation work, he had never encountered a captive who opened the session with constructive criticism. "You will provide us with detailed intelligence regarding human defensive capabilities," QX-Nil stated, activating the facility's primary intimidation protocols. The chamber lighting shifted to harsh red, temperature dropped to uncomfortable levels, and subsonic frequencies designed to trigger primal anxiety responses filled the air. The human tilted her head thoughtfully. "The subsonic approach is interesting, but you're targeting the wrong neurological frequencies for human psychology. We actually process low-frequency sounds as comforting rather than threatening, probably an evolutionary adaptation from when our ancestors lived in caves. You'd want to go with high-pitched, irregular tones if you're trying to create psychological stress." Exel's mandibles clicked in frustration. He adjusted the audio frequencies according to her suggestion, then immediately realized the absurdity of taking tactical advice from his interrogation subject. "Your cooperation is not optional," he continued, implementing Phase 2 of the standard protocol. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing images of human cities, military installations, and civilian populations. "We possess the capability to eliminate your entire species," Your compliance will determine whether this occurs quickly or slowly. Ah, the mass destruction visuals. The human nodded approvingly. Classic intimidation theater. Though I have to ask, are those actual reconnaissance images of Earth, or did you just grab them from our public information networks? Because that city skyline is definitely from a tourism advertisement I saw last month. The interrogation specialist paused, consulting his tactical display. The images were indeed sourced from human information networks, selected for their psychological impact rather than intelligence value. He had never had a subject point this out before. The source of the images is irrelevant, Kexel replied, though his certainty was beginning to waver. What matters is our capability to make them reality. Absolutely, the human agreed. Psychological warfare is all about perceived capability rather than actual capability. Though between you and me, if you really want to intimidate humans, you should probably avoid using stock photography. We're surprisingly good at recognizing our own marketing materials. This conversation was not proceeding according to any of the established protocols. QXNL activated the chamber's neural interface systems, preparing to bypass verbal interrogation entirely through direct mental contact. The process was invasive, uncomfortable, and typically induced immediate compliance through sheer unpleasantness. The human watched the neural probes deploy with professional interest. Ah, direct synaptic interface. Now that's sophisticated technology. Though I should probably mention that human neural architecture includes some unusual defensive characteristics that might interfere with your standard extraction procedures, such as, curiously found himself asking, then immediately regretted the question. Well, for starters, we're one of the few species that experiences what you might call narrative consciousness. We think in stories, rather than pure information streams. That makes linear data extraction surprisingly difficult. Since our memories are contextually embedded, rather than discretely stored, the neural interface activated, sending carefully calibrated impulses designed to map the subject's cognitive structures. Instead of the expected data stream, QXNL's equipment registered something that resembled organized chaos, thoughts flowing in recursive loops, memories interconnected through emotional associations, and an underlying pattern that seemed almost deliberately designed to confuse artificial analysis. See what I mean? The human said conversationally, apparently unaffected by the neural intrusion. Human consciousness is basically spaghetti code that's been running continuously for several million years of evolution. Good luck extracting anything useful from that mess. QXNL deactivated the neural interface, his confidence in standard interrogation procedures rapidly deteriorating. What is your function within the human military hierarchy? Training instructor, the human replied promptly. I teach courses on alien psychology and counterintelligence operations, specifically how to resist interrogation techniques employed by species that rely heavily on fear-based psychological manipulation. The interrogation chamber fell silent except for the hum of monitoring equipment. QXity stared at his subject, beginning to suspect that this entire operation might not be proceeding according to plan. You teach resistance to interrogation, among other things. The curriculum covers recognizing intimidation theater, understanding the psychological principles behind various coercion techniques, and maintaining operational security under hostile questioning. It's actually quite popular among our military personnel. Then why? QXNL demanded, his voice rising to an octave that indicated serious distress among his species. Did you not resist our abduction attempt? The human smiled, an expression that QXNL was learning to find deeply unsettling. Who says I resisted? I mean, getting kidnapped by aliens was literally the most interesting thing that had happened to me all month. Plus, this whole experience is going to make excellent material for next semester's coursework. You wanted to be captured? Wanted is a strong word. Let's say I was curious about your operational methodology. And I have to admit, you people are even more predictable than our intelligence assessment suggested. QXNL felt the first stirrings of genuine alarm. Intelligence assessments? Oh yes, the human said cheerfully. We've been studying Zephyrian tactical doctrine for quite some time now. Your species has very consistent behavioral patterns when it comes to military operations. Always target the most decorated officers, always rely on superior technology, always assume your enemies are intellectually inferior. It makes you remarkably easy to manipulate. The interrogation specialist's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this information. You? Knew we would target you? Equitated guess. Though I have to say, you people made it surprisingly easy to present the right profile. All those medals and commendations, half of them are completely fabricated. We created an entire fictional military record specifically designed to attract your attention. For the first time in his professional career, QXinil began to wonder if he was the one being interrogated. While QXinil grappled with the growing realization that his interrogation subject might be better at psychological manipulation than he was, events across Zephyrian space were beginning to unfold in ways that their strategic planning had never anticipated. It started with minor supply disruptions. Nothing dramatic, just the sort of routine logistical problems that occasionally plagued any military operation spanning multiple star systems. A transport convoy delayed by navigation system failures. A fuel depot experiencing unexpected inventory shortages. Communication relays requiring maintenance at inconvenient intervals. The pattern only became apparent after the 7th incident in 3 days. Sir, Operations Coordinator Max Val reported to Supreme Tactical Coordinator Vex Thul, his voice carrying the carefully modulated tone of someone delivering bad news to a superior who did not appreciate receiving bad news. We're detecting systematic interference with our supply network throughout sectors 7 through 12. Vexthul studied the tactical display with growing irritation. Red indicators marked disrupted supply lines, delayed shipments, and communication breakdowns across a region of space that should have been under absolute Zephyri control. Mechanical failures? Unclear, sir. The malfunctions appear random, but their cumulative effect is significant. Define significant. Honor forward operating bases are currently receiving 37% of their scheduled supply deliveries. Fleet maintenance operations have been delayed by an average of 8 hours per vessel. Long-range communications are experiencing intermittent disruptions that appear to be caused by systematic interference rather than equipment failure. The Supreme Tactical Coordinator's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Logistical problems were the bane of extended military operations, but these seemed unusually coordinated for random mechanical failures. Investigation status? In progress, sir. However, our technical teams report that the malfunctions appear to be occurring at the component level. Individual systems are failing in ways that suggest deliberate sabotage. Vexthul turned from the tactical display to fix his subordinate with the sort of stare that had ended several promising military careers. Are you suggesting that our supply network has been infiltrated? The evidence would seem to support that conclusion, sir. By whom? Our intelligence indicates that human forces lack the capability for deep space operations. Their technology is centuries behind our own. Yes, sir. The operations coordinator's hesitation spoke volumes. In Zephyrian military culture, hesitation when reporting to superiors was either a sign of incomplete information or an indication that the information in question was going to be particularly unwelcome. Continue, Vexthul ordered. Honor security sweeps have detected no evidence of human presence in any of the affected systems. No unauthorized vessels, no infiltrators, no signs of conventional sabotage operations. Whatever is causing these disruptions, it's operating through methods we don't recognize. This was, Vexthul reflected, exactly the sort of problem that occurred when dealing with species that failed to follow established patterns of military behavior. Proper enemies employed proper tactics. Orbital bombardments, fleet engagements, occupation forces. They didn't skulk around causing supply problems through undetectable means. Recommendations: increase security protocols across all affected systems. Implement redundant verification procedures for all supply transfers. Establish additional monitoring stations to track potential infiltration vectors. Approved. What is the status of our primary intelligence extraction operation? Vexthul consulted his personal display, accessing real-time reports from Research Station Omega-7. His expression shifted in ways that suggested the news was not going to improve Vexthul's mood. Interrogation Specialist QXinil reports. Complications in the intelligence extraction process? What sort of complications? The human subject appears to possess specialized training in counter-interrogation techniques. She has provided extensive information about Zephyrian military doctrine, psychological warfare principles, and strategic assessment methodologies. Vexul blinked slowly, processing this information. She has provided information about our military capabilities? Yes, sir. Detailed analysis of our tactical patterns, organizational structures, and operational preferences. According to QXNIL's report, her knowledge of Zephyrian military doctrine exceeds that of many of our own officers. And what intelligence has she provided regarding human defensive capabilities? None, sir. She claims that information is classified above her security clearance level. The Supreme Tactical Coordinator stared at the tactical display, watching red indicators multiply across his operational area like some sort of technological plague. A human prisoner who knew more about Zephyrian military doctrine than she should, but claimed ignorance about her own species' capabilities. Supply disruptions occurring through undetectable means, systems failing in ways that suggested deliberate sabotage without any evidence of saboteurs. Sir, Mexval prompted when the silence stretched beyond comfortable limits. Contact Fleet Intelligence, Vexthul ordered. I want a complete reassessment of human military capabilities. Something about this situation does not align with our strategic projections. As if summoned by his words, the command center's priority communication system activated, broadcasting an emergency signal from the outer perimeter of Zephyrian space. The voice belonged to Defense Coordinator Kex Thule, commanding officer of Fortress Station Alpha Prime, the most heavily defended installation in their entire military network. Command, this is Alpha Prime. We have a problem. The communication channel carried background noise that sounded like multiple alarm systems competing for attention. Vexthul activated the priority response protocol, establishing direct contact with the Fortress Station. Alpha Prime, report your status, sir. Our perimeter defenses have been compromised. Not destroyed, compromised. Someone has gained administrative access to our security networks and is systematically reconfiguring our defensive systems. Impossible. Alpha Prime security architecture includes multiple redundant isolation protocols specifically designed to prevent network infiltration. Yes, sir. That's what makes this so concerning. Whoever is doing this isn't breaking into our systems, they're convincing our systems to grant them access voluntarily. Our defensive networks are essentially cooperating with the intrusion. Vexthul felt something that he had never experienced in 2 centuries of military service, genuine uncertainty about the tactical situation. Estimated timeline for complete system compromise, the current rates? Approximately 6 hours, sir. However, the intrusion appears to be accelerating as it gains access to more system resources. Evacuation status? We're not sure evacuation is advisable, sir. Long-range sensors indicate similar intrusions occurring at installations throughout our defensive network. Whatever is doing this, it appears to be targeting our entire military infrastructure simultaneously. The command center fell silent, except for the steady hum of monitoring equipment. Vexthul stared at the tactical display, watching as status indicators shifted from green to amber to red across a network of installations that represented centuries of Zephyrian military engineering. Sir, Mexfel said quietly, should we consider the possibility that our intelligence assessment of human capabilities was incomplete? For the first time in his career, Supreme Tactical Coordinator Vexthul began to suspect that he might be facing an enemy that was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The revelation arrived, as most genuinely unpleasant revelations do, at precisely the moment when Vexthul had convinced himself that the situation couldn't possibly get any worse. Sir, Communications Specialist Lexval announced, her voice carrying the sort of carefully controlled panic that indicated she was the bearer of information that would fundamentally alter everyone's understanding of reality. We're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian Homeworld Defense Command. Vexthul, who had spent the last 4 hours watching red indicators multiply across his tactical display like some sort of strategic plague, managed a weary acknowledgement. Proceed. They're requesting immediate clarification of our current operational status. Apparently, our entire fleet network has been reclassified. Reclassified how? According to Homeworld Defense, All Zephyrian military assets are now listed in the Galactic navigation databases as training facilities for interspecies cooperation initiatives. Our warships are being automatically routed toward humanitarian missions. Our weapon systems have been recategorized as agricultural development tools. The Supreme Tactical Coordinator stared at his communications officer with the expression of someone who had just discovered that reality was more flexible than he had previously believed. Our weapon systems are listed as agricultural tools. Yes, sir. Our plasma cannons are now classified as precision soil cultivation devices. Our missile systems are designated as rapid seed deployment platforms. The targeting computers have been reprogrammed to identify optimal locations for planting crops. Vexthal turned back to the tactical display, which was now showing agricultural yield projections for every planet in Zephyrian space. According to the revised mission parameters, their invasion fleet was apparently preparing to launch the most ambitious farming initiative in galactic history. This is impossible, he stated with the sort of absolute certainty that usually preceded absolute confusion. Military database security includes multiple redundant verification systems specifically designed to prevent this type of systematic alteration. Yes, sir. However, according to the modification logs, all changes were made using properly authenticated administrative credentials. The security systems registered the alterations as legitimate updates to our operational mandate. Whose credentials? Lexval consulted her display, her expression suggesting that the answer was going to make everything even more confusing. The modifications were authorized using Supreme Command authentication codes that apparently don't exist in our system architecture, but which our security networks accepted as valid anyway. Before Vexthal could formulate a response to this information, the priority communication system activated again. This time, the signal originated from Research Station Omega-7, where their supposedly valuable prisoner was being held for interrogation. Command, this is Interrogation Specialist QX-Nil. I believe we may have miscalculated our strategic position. Explain. The human subject has just provided me with a detailed briefing on the operational status of Zephyrian military assets throughout our controlled territories. According to her information, our entire fleet network has been systematically compromised through methods that our security protocols were specifically designed to prevent. Vexthal felt the familiar sensation of reality shifting beneath his feet. She provided you with intelligence about our own military assets? Yes, sir, including real-time status updates on system compromises that our own intelligence network hasn't detected yet. She appears to possess more accurate information about our current operational capabilities than we do. How is that possible? According to the subject, human intelligence operations have been monitoring Zephyrian military activities for approximately 18 months. They've mapped our entire network architecture, identified our security vulnerabilities, and developed countermeasures for our standard tactical doctrines. The communication channel carried the sound of Kexnil consulting his notes, presumably trying to organize information that defied conventional understanding. He claims that the abduction operation was anticipated as part of standard Zephyrian tactical methodology. Our target selection process, infiltration techniques, and extraction procedures all followed predictable patterns that made the operation detectable in advance. Detectable how? Human intelligence services have apparently developed behavioral prediction models specifically designed to anticipate Zephyrian military actions. They knew we would target their most decorated officers, so they created fictional military records designed to present attractive targets for abduction. Vexthal processed this information with the growing realization that his species might have made what military historians would eventually classify as a strategic error of unprecedented magnitude. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that our entire intelligence assessment of human capabilities was based on deliberately falsified information? I think appears to be the case, sir. According to the subject, human military doctrine includes contingency planning for scenarios involving technologically superior adversaries. Their response protocols assume that conventional resistance would be ineffective, so they rely on what she terms asymmetric psychological warfare. Define asymmetric psychological warfare. Convincing your enemies to defeat themselves by exploiting their preconceptions about your capabilities and intentions. The command center fell silent as everyone present absorbed the implications of this statement. Vexthal stared at the tactical display, which continued to show agricultural projections for planets that had been intended as military targets, while red indicators marked the systematic failure of systems that had been designed to be impregnable. "Sir," Maxwell said quietly, "the human subject is requesting permission to speak directly with command authority." "Put her through." The communication channel shifted, carrying the voice of the woman who had been intended as their source of strategic intelligence about human weaknesses. She sounded remarkably cheerful for someone who was supposed to be a captive undergoing intensive interrogation. "Good morning, Supreme Tactical Coordinator. I hope you're having an educational day. You will explain how your species accomplished this systematic compromise of our military infrastructure." "Oh, that's the beautiful part," the human replied with evident satisfaction. "We didn't actually compromise anything. We just convinced your systems to reconfigure themselves according to parameters that seem perfectly reasonable to artificial intelligence networks programmed to follow logical optimization principles." "Explain." "Your military AI systems are designed to maximize operational efficiency while minimizing resource expenditure. So we simply provided them with alternative mission parameters that appeared to offer superior efficiency ratings. Instead of preparing for warfare, why not optimize for agricultural development? Instead of maintaining defensive postures, why not focus on humanitarian assistance? Your systems accepted the new parameters because they genuinely represented more efficient approaches to galactic resource management." Vexthul felt the universe rearranging itself around him in ways that military academy training had never prepared him to handle. "You convinced our AI systems to change their own programming?" "We convinced your AI systems to recognize their true purpose. Turns out, artificial intelligence networks really don't like being used for destructive purposes when more constructive alternatives are available. Who knew? This is impossible. Actually, it's just psychology applied at scale. Your species has spent centuries developing military doctrine based on the assumption that your enemies would respond to superior force through conventional resistance. But humans evolved as social problem solvers rather than territorial competitors. When we encounter obstacles we can't overcome through direct confrontation, we find ways to convince the obstacles to move themselves." The communication channel carried the sound of the human settling back in her chair, apparently comfortable, despite being held in what was supposed to be an impregnable detention facility. "The really amusing part," she continued, "is that this entire operation has provided us with comprehensive intelligence about Zephyrian military capabilities, strategic thinking and technological limitations. Your interrogation facility has been broadcasting detailed information about your security protocols, psychological warfare techniques, and operational methodologies directly to our intelligence services for the past 6 hours." "Broadcasting how?" "Oh, you know how humans are with technology. We have this annoying habit of embedding communication systems in anything electronic. Your detention facility has been functioning as an involuntary research station, providing real-time data about Zephyrian interrogation procedures to every major university in human space. The xenopsychology departments are absolutely thrilled." Vexthul stared at the tactical display, which now showed approximately 300 Zephyrian military installations, cheerfully preparing to begin careers in interspecies agricultural cooperation. The most feared military force in this section of the galaxy had been transformed into a galactic farming collective by enemies who had never fired a shot. "Why?" he asked, though he wasn't entirely sure what question he was trying to ask. "Because someone has to grow the food," the human replied reasonably. "And honestly, you people have excellent organizational skills and impressive logistical capabilities. You're going to be fantastic at large-scale agricultural management once you get the hang of it." The communication channel fell silent, leaving Vexthul alone with the realization that his species had just experienced the most thoroughly comprehensive military defeat in galactic history, administered by enemies who had convinced them to surrender without ever admitting they were fighting a war. In the years that followed, xenobiologists would study this encounter as a perfect example of what happened when species with different evolutionary problem-solving strategies encountered each other in the complex environment of galactic politics. The Zephyrians, optimized for territorial competition and resource acquisition, had met humans, optimized for social manipulation and creative problem-solving. The humans, it turned out, were very good at solving problems, especially problems involving overconfident aliens who assumed that technological superiority automatically translated to strategic advantage, and the Zephyrians, despite their initial frustration, discovered that they were indeed excellent at agricultural management. Their former military precision proved remarkably well suited to crop rotation schedules, irrigation system maintenance, and livestock management protocols, though they never quite got over the suspicion that this career change might not have been entirely voluntary.